As we get back into our study, we started last week into our study about the horizontal Jesus, and we talked about how it's important that we have our vertical relationship with God, and that's up and down. That's with us and God. But what is just as important, and sometimes even more so important, because it reflects that vertical relationship, is our horizontal relationship, the relationship we have with other people, the relationship we have with people we interact with, those that we know and those that we don't know. And that's called a horizontal relationship. We're not above them, they're not above us. We're on the same plane. God's the only one that's above us. And you truly cannot have a good vertical relationship or a relationship between you and God if you don't have a good relationship with other people. And Jesus spoke a lot about that as he ministered for 3 years. Now, tonight we're going to talk about, as we talk about our relationship with other people and our horizontal relationship, the main thing, the first thing you come to when you start talking about relationship with other people is love. And I've said it over and over, and I stand by it, that if you tried to boil the Bible down, somebody said, explain this book to me in one word, it's love. Everything that God has done for us is because of love, but everything that we do for others should be also because of love. Now, everybody has heard the song, What's Love Got to Do With It? That's an old song. Everybody here, I'm sure, has heard that at some point. What's love got to do with it? And that came out, and that was a very popular song, and it asks you, well, what does love have to do with it? And if you think about it, love has everything to do with it. And it don't matter, when you talk about what's love got to do with it, what's it got to do with what? Well, it don't matter. Everything. Love has to do with everything. Anything that you do in life, if you apply love to it, it changes it. Love is the main thing. Now, as we get into start into this, the main scripture for tonight is John chapter 13, verse 34. And it simply says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." Now, as a Christian, I don't want people to have to ask me if I'm a Christian. I don't want to have to go around telling people that I'm a Christian. I've said it for years in my business. I know people that they advertise on all their trucks and all their vehicles. They put, Christian phrases on them and different things. I know people that's got Jesus Saves all over their truck, and I know one guy that's got on his electrician's truck says bringing God's power to you, and listen, I don't need to do all those things. I don't think we need to walk around with a sign telling people that we're a Christian. Jesus said it's simple. They will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. So if we interact with people and we deal with people in a loving way, and we show people love, and we deal with people in a Christian way, we don't have to go around telling people we're Christians. We don't have to go around acting, showing off or holding the signs up. People will know. And I think that's the way that we need to live our life. Now, anybody's got kids over or under about 30 would know about the movie Beauty and the Beast. And everybody's heard the story of Beauty and the Beast, but back, I guess it was in the mid-90s when Disney came out with their animated one of Beauty and the Beast. And in Beauty and the Beast, this young boy who didn't act very nice, and he had no love in his heart. And because of that, this old witch turned him into a beast, and he was a monster. And she said he could not change back until he had true love. And true love was what was going to make him change back. And of course, throughout the movie, a lot of different circumstances happened, and in the end, though, Belle fell in love with the beast, and the beast fell in love with Belle. In Disney fashion, just in the nick of time, just before the time was up, as the last petal of the rose fell and all that. But the fact is that he did change. And he changed because of love. So when you go back to that song, what's love got to do with it? And then you look at it. Listen, love changes people. Now I know that Beauty and the Beast, that's an extreme measure, but let's face it, love makes all of us change. Love changes you. It changes your heart. It changes everything about you. Now, one thing that I see here, and one of the main points in John chapter 13, verse 34 that we see, Jesus did not suggest that we love one another. Jesus didn't imply it. He wasn't subtle about it. He didn't give us hints. He didn't say, well, it's a really good idea. It's not something, he didn't say it's something you should do. It's something you ought to make a point to do. It's something that you ought to make a major priority. He said, a new commandment. You see, when Jesus makes a commandment, everybody holds up the Ten Commandments, and everybody talks about the Ten Commandments. The greatest commands that Jesus said, the greatest of all the commandments was love the Lord your God and love your neighbor, right? When he was asked about it, that's the greatest, those are the greatest commandments. But then he says here, this new command. This new command that we love one another as Jesus loved us is the greatest kind of love. This tells us that we as Christians, we need to love each other, all the people of the world. But we need to show the same kind of love to people that Jesus shows to us. Now that's where it gets hard. It's hard to show people love like Jesus shows us, right? It's easy to love somebody who's lovable. Who don't think about it? Who don't love a puppy dog? We were talking about dogs earlier. Dogs are easy to love. Okay? Some people are easy to love. Some people they're easy to get along with. They're just kind-hearted. They're nice. They're sweet, and it's just really, really easy to love some people. And Jesus loved those kind of people. So when we look at it and say, well, Jesus said here to love people the way that I loved you, then hey, let's love those lovable people. But then we look, and there's just people out there that's not real easy to love. Let's just put it that way. There are people that we all know that you got to work at it. There's people that we all know that it would just be easier to dust your feet off and leave them alone, right? I think everybody here knows somebody like that. Most of us know several people like that. Some of us may be people like that. I don't know. But we all know people that's hard to love. And yes, Jesus loves those people too. So when I look at this and I see that Jesus says that we love one another as I have loved you, that makes me think, am I one of those people that is easy to love, or am I one of those that's hard to love? Reality is, when Jesus loved me first, I was one of those people that was hard to love. Romans chapter 5 verse 8 says, "But God commended His love to us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us." So, while I was a sinner, now as a sinner, you are an enemy to God. You're against, basically, when you're lost, before you become a Christian, you are Satan has the hold on you. You are the enemy to God. And while you were still a sinner, while you were still an enemy of God, while you were not a lovable person, you were not somebody worthy of love, Jesus still loved you enough to die for you. So when we look at these two verses here in John chapter 13, there's so much there that we can glean from this, because when he said that his new command is that we love one another the way he loved us, that means that while I was an enemy of his, he still had enough love for me to die for me. And then you go back and you think about those people you know that's on your list of people that's hard to love. And you look at those people and think, how am I supposed to love them? How am I supposed to find in my heart, you don't know what they've done to me, or you don't know what they've said, or what kind of tone they used with me, or they're just hateful all the time. There's a lot of those out there. We all interact with them. I deal with them on a daily basis at work. People that are just hard to deal with sometimes. But it doesn't matter. Jesus deals with them a lot more than I do, and He still loves them. And even, like I said, before we became lovable, before we were somebody that was worthy, and we're still not worthy of God's love, we are washed, we are cleansed, we are sanctified through Jesus, and that makes us worthy in itself. But before we came to that point, He still loved us. While we were yet sinners, God commended His love toward us. And that brings us up to Matthew chapter 5. And it ties in with John chapter 13 when you look at loving one another as I have loved you. You go to Matthew chapter 5, and in verse 44, it says, "But I say to you, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you. And pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you." That's difficult. That's when loving one another gets difficult. Even those people who are talking about you behind your back. Even those people who are putting you down. Even those people who get up in your face. Those people that just you just can't deal with. Jesus said, love your enemy. Bless those who curse you. Now, most of us, if you get cursed, you're more apt to curse back than you are to show them love or to bless them. If you bless them, it might be the wrong kind of blessing, But listen, Jesus said, these are words in red here. This is Jesus' words said, love your enemy. Bless those who curse you. And then do good for those people who hate you. Now, Jesus tells us that those kind of actions will heap coals upon their head. You don't have to try to get back at people. There are people out there that's going to do you wrong. There's people out there that's going to always be doing something against you and just making life hard for you. And it's easy to just walk away from them. But listen, if you really want to get them back, and I'm not saying show them love in order to get them back, but there's nothing will make somebody feel worse that's been mean to you than to just be sweet to them, show them love, do good things for them, go and offer to help them, take them a supper, different things like that. And that's what Jesus tells us to do. Listen, you can change people's heart. Love, like I said with the Beauty and the Beast, nothing will change people like love. Whether it's coming from you or coming from them, love makes a difference to everybody. I love what he says here in verse 46. He says, "For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than others? Do not even the tax collectors do so?" Now he was using tax collectors here, even though he had one of his disciples was a tax collector. And we saw him eating with tax collectors and going to the home of tax collectors. Jesus was big on tax collectors. Why? They're like lawyers. They need God. And that's why he spent a lot of time with them. But you know what? He spent a lot of time with the people that the religious people shunned. He spent a lot of time with the people that those who were leading the church and those who thought they were above everybody else. They would not have anything to do with tax collectors. They thought they were the worst of sinners. And that's why Jesus used them here. But listen, those are the kind of people that Jesus showed the most love to. Tax collectors were the most hated people in all of Israel. Why? Because they collected the tax for the Romans, and the Israelites despised the fact that the Romans were over them, and they despised that fact. So if you were a tax collector, you were working for the enemy, so therefore you were despised. And nobody showed love to a tax collector. Nobody in all of Israel would show love to the tax collector except for Jesus. And he got put down by it. But that tells us as we look back at chapter 13 of John, when we show love is the way Jesus showed it to us. That means those people, like the tax collectors, that nobody else in the world seems to have love for. Those people that nobody else wants to show love to. Those people that everybody just kind of ignores and tries to just put out of their life and only deals with them when they have to. Listen, we see a lot of people like that in our world today, and it may not be just somebody that's got a certain profession. You look around, drive through downtown, or you drive through certain areas, and you'll see people. Some of our homeless people will walk to the other side of the street to avoid them. People try to stay away from them. People don't want anything to do with them. That's the way everybody was with tax collectors. And Jesus made a point. He called Zacchaeus down out of the tree and said, "I'm going to go home with you today. And I'm going to eat with you, and I'm going to fellowship with you." In order to be like Jesus, in order to reinforce that vertical relationship that we have with Jesus, we've got to look at what did Jesus do on this earth. How did he interact with the unlovable people? How did he interact with the people who were hard to love? He showed them more love than he did anybody else. He made it a point to go eat with them. He made it a point to talk with them. He made it a point that he called one of them to be his disciples. Fishermen were also not somebody that was not a pleasant person to be around. I mean, think about it. If you have ever watched any of the like Deadliest Catch or any of those kind of TV shows, commercial fishermen, you go down to the beach or you go on a port or somewhere, commercial fishermen are some of the roughneck people out there, okay? And they've got cranes and they've got hoists and they got all this stuff that does most of the work for them. The fishermen of Jesus' day, they were the roughnecks. They were hard working. They were considered, they were necessary. They were kind of like shepherds. They were necessary, but they were not the cream of the crop. They were not the people that you invited over to a highfalutin social. Okay? They were the kind of people that when they saw somebody on the beach and they decided to swim ashore, they had to put their clothes back on. That's what Peter had to do. He had to put his clothes back on to swim to shore. They got out there on the boat and they were rough. And guess what? Jesus loved those people. They were not the kind of people that you wanted to interact with normally. If you were just a normal citizen. But Jesus did. And then he made it a point that said, if you only love those people who are lovable, are you better than the tax collectors? Or are you better, basically what he was saying, are you any better than the worst people you could think of? Because even those people love their family. Even those people love people that show love. You got to love those people that hate you. You got to love those people who show you no love. You got to love those people that are not pleasant to be around. Now, that is not that's not for most of us. That's not something that it does not come. It doesn't come natural. That's where we are right now. It does not come natural. So if we only do those things that come natural, are we living as Christians? You see, Jesus calls us to do things that are above and beyond what is natural. If you do what is natural to anybody else, then you're not doing anything special. You're not doing anything that stands out. See, it's natural to love your family. It's natural to love those people that's good to you. But those people it's not natural. That's what makes it special. See, in order to do those things that are special and those things that will make you stand out as a Christian, that'll make you stand out as one of God's people, is doing the things that does not come natural to everybody else. Ephesians chapter 4 verse 32 says, "And be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ forgave you." See, that's also part of loving one another the way that Christ loved us. It's not just about doing good things for them. It's not just about going up and giving them a hug every once in a while and saying, "We love you." Those are all good things. But this is one of the hardest things. We can be fake. We can show love and not really mean it. But in order to truly show love, that's when we get down to the part that we have to forgive. Because that's part of love. There are people, and we as Christians, we deal with this a lot, especially in the church. It's not uncommon, and sometimes I think that we have to deal with this more than those people that's outside the church, and that's why a lot of people are outside the church. But there's always somebody in the church that seems to cause more trouble than anybody else. There's always somebody in the church that's going to say something that's going to hurt your feelings. There's always going to be somebody in the church that's going to stand against you on something and be hateful about it. There's always somebody in the church that's going to just be downright mean to you. And I've heard people say, well, people down at that church, let me tell you something. You're not going to find a church that don't have any of that. At least none of the ones I've ever been to. Not any of the ones I've ever heard of. They all have bickering. They all have something that there's somebody that's feuding with somebody else. And like I said, it seems like we have more of that in the churches than anywhere else. I heard a story about the guy who went to church and forgot to turn the ringer off on his phone, and when he in the middle of the sermon, his phone rang. His wife gave him a dirty look. Everybody gave him a dirty look. Everybody made him, just kind of gave him a hard time, and so he decided he wasn't going to go back to that church. He went back. He went to the bar later on, and he spilled his beer. Why? Everybody was just so nice and cleaned up after him and helped take care of him. The waitress said, "That's all right." The bartender said, "That's all right. I got a rag for that. We'll take care of it." And they showed him more love for his mistake than those people in the church did. And we see that. You don't see the bickering in the bar that you would in a church, I don't think. But that's the stigma that we have at the church. And the biggest reason for that is because we have forgotten to do the last part here in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32, where it says, forgiving one another. If you're going to be hateful to me, I'm just going to give you the cold shoulder, or I'm just going to be hateful back, and I'll take your parking place next week. I'll sit in your seat, move your stuff. Had that happen one time. But the thing is, we don't show love a lot of times because we have to deal with it. We have to deal with people as Christians. There's always going to be those people around us, and we have to handle it. And we have to handle it in the right way. And the way that we have to handle it is with love. Here's one thing that a lot of people in the world don't realize, though. Love is not an emotion. Love is a choice. True love is a choice. Now, eros love between a husband and wife, or love between a boyfriend and girlfriend, yeah, that you can classify that as a emotion. Agape love, phileo love, brotherly love, and sacrificial love, those are a choice. They're not emotions. They're not something that we just get fuzzy feelings about. They're not something that when we have love for each other, we don't get butterflies in our stomach over it. We don't get those kind of emotions. It's a choice. I have to make a choice that I'm going to love you. Conscious choice. And it's something that we have to have a desire and say, no matter what you do to me, no matter what kind of reaction I get out of you, no matter how we react or how we interact, I'm still going to show you love. Now, we show our love through many different ways. But do you show love, or do you do the things to try to show love, or does the love drive what you do? And that takes us to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Now, in King James Bible, this is actually called charity. But in all the rest, every other version, it's called love. And for some reason, in certain areas of the King James Bible, they translated agape love as charity. And so this in chapter 13 of 1 Corinthians is talking about agape love. And he says, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I have become sounding brass or clanging cymbals. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. So, When I'm saying that we have to show love to people, we make a conscious choice to love them, I'm not saying that you put on a good act of love. I'm not saying that you go out and you do something good for them just to make yourself feel good and make it feel like you're showing love. The choice to love is more than that. You see, if you do good things to try to show them that you love them, but you don't really have love, it profits nothing. That's basically what Paul's telling us here. It profits nothing. We have to have the motivation of love. The love has to come before the action, or it means nothing. The action of showing people love, it won't mean a thing to you if you don't have the true love, if you don't have the love of God coming through you. Now, in order to have that kind of true love for your fellow Christians, have that kind of true love for the people you interact with, you have to have that kind of love with God. You cannot, outside of God, have agape love. It just can't be there. You have to have a relationship with God, because God is love. So therefore, in order to have that relationship, you have to have a relationship with Him. So all of our actions and all of our good deeds and all the great things that we can do basically has to go back to love. And then as we look at the love and see, this is something you can't put on. That's why just doing good things for people and showing them a good act of love and trying to win them over, it doesn't work, because you can't get all this in there. Because love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself. It is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. You can't fake love, because that's what love means. You see, if you're trying to make somebody believe you love them, and you're just trying to show love, but you don't really feel it down in here. You're just not ready to submit to that. You're not really, and so you're just going to show them love. Yeah, you can't do that without parading it around. You can't do that without still having that, being rude about it. You can't do that without and have it right in your heart. You see, when Jesus came to this earth and He decided that these people down here that have treated me wrong, these people down here that have broken all my laws, have treated me bad, I'm going to go down there and I'm just going to show them a little bit of love. And I'm going to put on a good act. That's not what Jesus did. He said, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to give them everything I've got. I'm going to give them my life, and I'm going to pay with everything I've got. Now, He is not necessarily, He might at some point, but He's not necessarily asking that you go and you die for somebody. Even though that is a possibility, even though that is something that may happen at some point. What He is saying here is be willing to give anything and everything for those people you love. Be willing to go above and beyond what you would normally think is acceptable. Go above and beyond what is within your comfort zone. Because if you just show the kind of love that comes natural, if you just show the kind of love that is common among man, will anybody know that you're my disciple? Will anybody know that you're somebody different? But see, John chapter 13, verse 35 tells us, they will know that you're my disciples because of your love. That means it has to be an exceptional type of love. That means that we have to go above and beyond what is accepted by man. We go above and beyond what what is natural to us. Jesus showed us that kind of love, whether we were worthy, whether we were good or bad, He still showed it to us. And as we interact with people in this world, in order to have that horizontal relationship, and in order to establish that horizontal relationship that shows how much that we love Jesus, we show how much we love Jesus by how much we love the people around us. Because you can't love God and hate your neighbor. Jesus said so. So therefore, the best way to show Him that we love Him is by establishing and making the horizontal love a priority. And when we do that, we establish our love with Him. So,